right, welcome to this special edition of the Comics Multiverse. Today we are talking with our good friend Jim Whitting and his collaborator on SCAB, Steve Niles. So let me bring them in. Let's find out about them. Let's find out about the project. Hey guys, how's it going? Great to get to talk to you this afternoon.
Yeah, good. Thanks for having us.
Jim, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, Chad. Good to see you, Steve.
Good to see you.
It's been a while since I last saw you, Jim. I can't even remember the last event. It was probably one of the Albany shows or something.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was probably last fall that we saw you,
Jim.
Yeah.
So, but we're here today to talk about the Kickstarter that you guys are currently running, SCAB. But before we get to that, I'd like to find out a little bit about you guys, about your experience as a comic book reader and a creator. So I'll let you guys figure out who wants to go first. And
should I go first, Jim?
Go first.
Okay. Well, I guess, I'm a lifetime comic reader. I've been reading comics since I was a little kid. I remember probably my first memory of having a comic was actually an issue of Creepy. I got exposed to horror comics very early on. And then, when I was like a teenager, young adult, I was playing a lot of music and I was working, it was all DIY, DIY. We did all our, own shows. We put out our own records, we did all this stuff. And it literally was just like one of those things where I was like, I love comics. Why don't I just make some? It was like, yeah. oh, of course. And so when I was around 19, 20 or so, I started trying to put together a comic company called Arcane. And that got me started. I didn't do too much as Arcane, but I wound up teaming up with Eclipse Comics. And I did Clive Barker adaptations and things like that. But that got me started.
Okay.
Yeah, I when I was younger, I'll date myself here, probably mid-60s. I had a uncle who was more like my older brother, had a collection of comics, and I used to just pore over those things night and day. I could tell you what issue, who was in what, and also Creepy and Eerie at that time too, early issues, and horror movies, and so yeah, I had a wide range of reading, and I would just spend hours and hours going over that stuff. And then also spend nights sitting there trying to draw, like the guys did in the comics over and over, and just eventually hey, this is what I want to do. I want to create comics, something or another.
To date myself too, I got my start. The first creative stuff I ever did was making Super 8 movies. So there you go.
We used to watch the Super 8 movies. You watch Frankenstein versus the Wolfman.
I still have mine. I still have a stack of Super 8 movies that I used to. Oh, yeah. And I used to do a thing where I would take a Hammer Frankenstein movie and I would try to edit scenes in with my own.
Yeah.
Which, as you can imagine, looked horrible. But I was just a little kid.
Yeah.
Well, I know what you mean by, I know what you're talking about when you say Super 8 movies, because I a couple years ago had the 8mm Super 8 movies that were taken when I was a kid, and then I found some of my dad and his, growing up. So I had all those converted to digital just to kind of be able to save those memories.
Yeah, a ton of those with the really. Do yours have the really glaringly bright lights?
Yes, there's some funny light things going on there, and
yeah,
I've talked to the the ones with my dad and my aunts growing up. I really can't talk to the director anymore because they're no longer with us. But
yeah.
I have been making notes, on the ones that my parents took, and
Very cool.
So let's get into talking about SCAB. What is SCAB? When did it start? And what's it about?
SCAB is one of the first things I ever wrote. Jim was lucky enough to be exposed to all my early writing, take it or for better or worse.
Well,
And SCAB was, a big one that I watched. I wrote. I was a big fan. George Romero, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, all the zombie movies. So when it came, when I was writing stuff, naturally I wanted to do a zombie story, but I wanted to do something a little different. So we did it way after, the zombie apocalypse and everything sort of settled down. And it's just about this kid, this kid named SCAB who's on his own. And all he has is a zombie that he's, sort of befriended, if you could say that. But it's a lot, it's not just a horror story. It's a story about loneliness and dealing with things, as a kid.
Yes, I remember pretty much. I was working at Vanaco back in the late '80s, early '90s, and they had the Night of Living Dead license at the time, and we were messing around with all the Night of Living Dead mythos, and we did King of the Dead. Remember King of the Dead?
Oh yeah, I remember King of the Dead
and SCAB, and there was a bunch of stuff. And at some point, we were going to try to tie everything in, but we didn't get that far down the road.
Yeah.
But SCAB was a kind of a culmination of, we had done like probably 10 stories together by that point.
Yeah, well, we did Danger Brain,
Right.
which was a small collection of stories, and Uptown Zombies.
Yeah.
What else?
Where we did Sarah, which is a short story.
That's right.
We did Big Head, which was one of the first Cal McDonald stories.
That's right. Yeah, Jim illustrated one of the very first Cal McDonald stories, which now I do. I did a lot of them at Dark Horse on a series called Criminal Macabre.
Yeah.
So that was the same character from way early. That's right.
Yeah, we did that. And then I think SCAB was the culmination of that.
Didn't we do a sci-fi thing for Science Fiction Eye magazine?
We did.
Yeah, the insert.
Time Out, I think it was
Time
called.
Jam.
We also did, I think we went to San Diego with posters for the first Big Head. And
That's right. And I remember we misspelled Dean Mulaney's name. He was all mad. Dean Mulaney was the publisher at Eclipse. And we just barreled ahead with our own promotion and misspelled people's names.
I think we were handing out at San Diego. We were handing them out. I think we were down there trying to set up Night of the Living Dead London with Clive.
Yeah.
And my wife was expecting, and so I had to keep calling every half an hour.
Oh, that's right.
I'll be back. I need to call, check, make sure she's not having the baby.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So, kind of why did you guys want to return to SCAB?
I personally, that was a great story, and I love the story. And looking through the artwork, I mean, it was done 32 years ago, but I think it was a really good story. One of the best things that I've worked on, and I have all the original artwork, and so to revisit it, I also looked at it and I said, wow, I did this 32 years ago. Some of the stuff just didn't work. Some stuff looks great and I really like it and I want to get it out. So we're kind of remastering it in a way and refleshing it out because I think it's worth getting out. I think it's a good story.
And nobody's seen it. I mean, it's been out of print for 30 years. So it's really cool. And it really is an exceptional situation that Jim had all the original art for us to shoot from.
Well, one of the fun parts was I would go down to Steve's on weekends sometimes. I would drive down and spend the weekend with him, and we shot all of DC and the areas that SCAB was going to be in. So, back then we didn't have the digital cameras, but after I got the film developed, we had this whole montage of pictures for references for the DC area. And so to me, as the artist, DC sort of became one of the characters in the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also it was, because you lived in New York and DC was very different the way it was scripted. SCAB does a thing where he has this giant 2x4 and he manages to run around the city without ever touching the ground. He just runs roof to roof, and when I remember when I first pitched that to you, you were like, what? How can you do that? And then you saw everything in DC is very short. It's not a lot of skyscrapers.
Yeah.
Because nothing in DC is allowed to be higher than the Capitol, I believe. I think is the law. So you had to come there and see like how it would actually work.
Well, DC at that time too was a very different DC.
It was very different.
The city was falling apart. The water wasn't drinkable. Mary was charged with drug charges and things.
Yeah, the crime was incredible. The shootings all the time. Remember, I used to live when I lived on. Do you remember when I lived on Capitol Hill?
Yeah.
And I'd be on the phone, and people would be like, "Oh, what's that sound?" I'm like, "Oh, gunshots." I mean, it was that bad.
Yeah. So it was good. It's fun to revisit it and look at it, and not only from a retro perspective, but going forward, how can we put this out and really get this story out?
And you've kind of touched on it, but let's talk a little bit more about the collaborative process between you guys. It sounds like you guys were working very closely on the story and kind of the art that goes along with it. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah, we worked together quite a bit. I remember sending Steve the first drawings for DC. He's like, "That doesn't look like DC. You got to come down here and shoot DC."
Yeah.
Okay. Now I got an idea of what DC looks like.
Yeah, we were in almost daily contact. We worked together, on a lot of different stuff. We actually met when you were doing Slaughterhouse Magazine, though?
Yeah, I was doing Slaughterhouse Magazine, this horror magazine I put out in the 80s, Fangoria competitor. And Steve sent me a bunch of Clive Barker lithos out of nowhere and a copy of Fly in My Eye. And so I got in touch with him because my secret desire was really to do comics, but I started doing the horror magazines. I was working for a publisher doing wrestling magazines at the time. And I talked him into letting me do a horror magazine. So we managed to get 5 issues out.
Yeah.
And so
it was a really cool magazine.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it was some of the first coverage I ever got, so it was amazing.
No, it was a lot of fun. And we were both at the same point in our careers just starting out. So it just made sense to get together and collaborate and start doing stuff. So Steve started sending me scripts. I was like, this stuff is great. I'd love to do this.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the Kickstarter itself. What are you guys offering for people to support, the project?
Well, one of the things that's been pretty good is I have all the original art, and that's been selling pretty well. A lot of guys work digital now, and I do too, but having the original art really makes for a nice reward where you can sell off the artwork. And we're also offering signed editions and a portfolio. I've done a bunch of new artwork for the series. I did a new cover, and then we have the classic cover, and Steve's going to sign a bunch of the books. So we kept it pretty simple, pretty close to the bone. We didn't do a lot of stuff like bringing in other artists and things like that. And it's been going pretty well. We hit 4,000 this morning, so that's good.
Ooh.
We're going to have, starting tomorrow, we'll have another week. And you'll be seeing me all over the place pushing it.
And also, I think I'm going to write a new introduction.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about a lot of the stuff we're talking about right now. So that'll be a new bonus.
Yeah, so we're, and also one of the things I do with the Kickstarters that I don't normally announce is I do print a lot of extra stuff to send contributors. So they'll be getting big packages in the mail of stuff, There's postcards, prints, things like that, bookmarks that I print up during the course of the campaign, and all that stuff will be going out to contributors. Plus, we did a lot of Steve's books were put on ad ends, and they've all sold out. So that's pretty good.
They sold out?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Very nice to hear.
Now, Steve, is this your first experience with Kickstarter?
No, I've never done one myself, but I've been involved with others. Years ago, I did one called. I was involved with one called Lust with Ben Templesmith and Menton Matthews. There've been a few, but I've always let somebody else do all do all the running around because I don't know what's going on.
Well, that leads me to my next question, because I know Jim has done a couple, for his other stuff. How is this campaign any different? Are you seeing any,
Well, I usually do one campaign a year, and by that point, everything's changed. So I had to go through a big learning process all over again with, what's working, what's not working. You get to a certain extent where what's working on social media, what kind of ads. I've been doing some Facebook ads, but all that's changed since last year. So it's kind of a big learning process all over again. I mean, you have the basics, but getting the word out is the big thing, and so I've been doing a lot of stuff with Substack and a lot of the other social sites, pushing and trying to build audience and get the word out,
Okay.
One of the big things with Kickstarter this time is they've added a bunch of extra features. They don't do these videos live. You have to sort of go through YouTube, but they've also offered ways to connect links so I can find out who's coming from where to contribute, from like whether they're from Facebook or they're from YouTube or they're from my email. So that's kind of interesting in a way to do that,
Nice. So do you guys have time to do a segment I like to call 5 questions?
Sure.
All right, you guys can pick who goes first. The first question is, let's go with top 5 horror movies. Since SCAB is kind of a zombie post-apocalyptic, I'll even let you include post-apocalyptic movies in this in your choice.
For my top movies are always Night of the Living Dead, the original, in 1968, Dawn of the Dead, John Carpenter's The Thing, which is just the greatest movie ever, the original Frankenstein, and what would be the fifth? Fifth would probably be The Exorcist.
Okay, nice.
Oh, my 5, I think Bride of Frankenstein is one of my favorites. Invisible Man, which wasn't for a number of years, but I've been watching that again. I'm pretty into that. Let's see, John Carpenter's Thing, which is just a classic. Number 4 would have to be 30 Days a Night.
Oh.
It's a great movie.
I wonder who does that.
Yeah. And 5th, it rotates around. I don't know. I'm into. I like some of the Netflix, like the Black Mass and things like that. They're not movies, but I think they're great pieces.
Okay. All right. Question number 2. Who would be on your personal Mount Rushmore of comic book creators?
Oh, for me, it's all early stuff. John Romita Sr., Sal Buscema, Jack Kirby. I love Frank Robbins and John Buscema.
Okay.
All artists.
Hey.
Oh, and Bernie Wrightson. Good Lord. Sorry. I'm going to move somebody over. I'll bump somebody.
I know. I always I know that I'm asking you to pick 4 or 5 when there's only 4 faces on Mount Rushmore, and the comic history of the comic industry has so many great artists and writers.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Kirby, Ditko, Gene Colan, but I mean some of the Mobius. I like Mobius's stuff, and I would have to say probably John Buscema.
Yeah. Okay. Question number 3. I'm going to strand you on a desert island, but you can only take 5 things to read. And because I'm nice, I will let you take 4 runs of a creators or creative teams, work.
Comic books or
Yeah,
book
or
books?
anything you want.
Well, it would have to be a copy of I Am Legend,
Mm-hmm.
my favorite book. What else? The run of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. How many?
5.
Oh my God. Charles
You
Burns
often think of
collection, Daniel Clowes collection, and a copy of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley.
Comic wise, I think I would have to take Watchmen. I would also take Dark Knight, the Frank Miller original one, and Love and Rockets. I'm a big fan of.
Okay.
The original series, probably like the first 20 issues, I think were really good. As far as book wise, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And do I have one more or not?
I'll give you one more.
Well, I'd have The Art of War, but since I'm by myself, I'd only be fighting myself. But I'd take it anyway.
Okay. Question number 4. How have you guys individually grown as creators from this, from when you started to this project? And you can also include, advice you'd give your younger self.
Well, I hope I'm a better writer after all these years. After 30 years, I feel like I'm a lot more prolific. And I enjoy I remember back then writing was a little harder, because I was new, didn't really know what I was doing altogether. Now, years of experience, it's a little easier to sit down and organize my thoughts and write. The advice I'd give to my younger self is the advice I'd give to, everybody who writes, which is don't ask for permission, just go do it. If you want to make a comic, make a comic. And the thing, this always sounds like I'm being obnoxious, but a writer has to write, and I think that's the biggest thing. I've met a lot of writers who have ideas and they never sit down and write them, but it's a lonely thing to sit for hours and hours by yourself. But it's very necessary to actually do it, and don't give up, just don't give up.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, after I started out working with Steve and had a family, so I sort of left the comic industry for a number of years, and slowly over the last 6 or 7 years, I got back into it, starting with Kickstarter and doing some books. And the thing for me is getting back into the nuts and bolts of it and relearning what I do. I have the time to do it, and it's something I couldn't do when I was working a day job. So I got rid of the day job and I'm spending my time doing that. The advice I'd give a younger artist or whatever is don't be afraid to be different. I spent a lot of time imitating other artists, and really my time should have been spent developing my own style and something that's more recognizable. And don't be afraid to be different, as Steve said, particularly with the artwork, because you want people to recognize what you're doing, and just keep going. Don't stop. I like the Kirby quote. It's like, don't let anybody ever tell you can't draw comics.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 5. What is your personal take on the state of the comics industry at this time?
It's very strange, everything's moving around. People are doing different stuff, like a lot of people are kickstarting, to do their projects and not going to publishers as much. There's a lot more people doing creator owned. doing their own stuff instead of working for the big two. So I think that's it. I think the comic, I know people are always crying that comics are dying, but I think it's in pretty good shape. You know, stuff seems to be selling. We've gotten some big numbers on some books, you know, like Dynamite doing Thundercats and stuff like that. So I think we're fine. I think the comic industry is in good shape right now.
Yeah, I think it's going through a big transition right now. I think the digital age has changed a lot, distribution, how to get the word out. And, you know, what I'm finding with just marketing and other stuff is go direct to your readers. And, you know, you don't need to go through a big company. You can start this stuff up yourself. And, you know, things will settle out over the next few years. But I think now there's a lot of different channels. You have Kickstarter, you have web comics, you have stores still picking up comics. And you know, as audiences gotten older and younger audiences come in, there's a bit more segmentation. So, you know, being more aware of what audience you're trying to reach is important. But I think it's going through a big transition. I think it hasn't settled out yet, and it will in a few years.
Okay. So as we start to wrap up, are either of you reading anything, you know, be it comics, be it a book that, you know, you are enjoying and would recommend that people check out?
I have a nice stack that I'm meaning to read. The most recent thing I got was a new Dan Clowes book called Monica.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love him. He's just great.
I read everything. Right now I'm reading the original novels of Slow Horses, which I find pretty entertaining because they sort of supplement the show because the writer does everybody's perspective. So you kind of get the what they're thinking about while they're going through what they're doing. It's kind of cool. Comic-wise, I read a lot of stuff. I still go into the comic shop and I just browse and pick what I like. I don't do a lot of subscription because I really want to go pick out what I like. You know, I'll still read some superhero stuff, not a lot. I'm very picky about it, but a lot of independent stuff, Image, Dark Horse, Boom. You know, everybody's doing really interesting things now, and it's really cool to see what's going on.
Nice. So, do you guys have any like convention plans or anything like that coming up for this summer?
I am probably going to be at San Diego this year.
Okay.
So that's all I have planned.
Okay.
Well, Albany show's next month, so I'll be at the Albany.
Next Albany show. Great show.
I'll probably go to New York, wander around, talk to people. It's always a fun day to get in and out, and not too far. And then I think there's another Albany show in the fall. And, you know, if anybody asks, sure. I mean, I like doing local shows because you get to talk to people and, you know, talk about your books and what you do. It's a little smaller and you get a little more connection with people.
Okay. So how about as we continue to wrap up, as I keep saying, how about one final pitch for the Kickstarter and where people can find you if you're on social media or anything like that?
Well, I'm on
if you're working on anything that you have coming up that you can talk about.
Oh, well, the next thing I have coming up is a book called The Killing Hole, which is a retelling of a story that Jim and I did originally. And I just completely changed it it's pretty interesting to look at, you know, seeing a 20-page comic. I turned it into an 86-page graphic novel. So I did that. That's coming up in July. And people can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I'm on Blue Sky, but nothing's happening over there.
I haven't checked out Blue Sky yet. I keep hearing it.
Boring.
Is it?
Yeah, it's very quiet.
At least it's not Twitter. So
yeah, it's not Twitter.
Reddit is the new Twitter. I think it's kind of.
How's that for a marketing slogan? We're not Twitter.
Yeah.
X or whatever.
We're not X. So yeah, support Cat SCAB. If you haven't got out there yet, show some support, show some love. We're trying to get this book out. We're getting close. We're going to go into the last week, and as I said, you'll be seeing me all over social media. Jim Whiting. I'm on Instagram at Whiting Studios. I'm also on Substack. I do a Behind the Process newsletter about every 2 weeks. I can't stand getting stuff every day, so it's every 2 weeks. And just working on some short stories. I'll be pitching, and you'll be hearing more about them in the future. And that's about it.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to chat. We're we at Comic Watch, we are following the campaign every week over on our site in our crowdfunding corner, which runs every Saturday at noon. But I wish you guys the best of luck as you guys head into your last week. Jim, hopefully I'll get to see you at the Albany Comic-Con here in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve, I hope to be able to meet you in person someday, because I really have loved the work that you've done, and would like to be able to tell you in person, just not over a video screen.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Thank you.
We're trying to get him up to the Albany show one of these days.
Yeah, we can get me there in less than 5 flights.
Yeah, well, we're working on that. We're trying to get one where the wing doesn't fly off.
Yeah, the door.
Yeah, with the door, yeah.
All right, Chad, thanks.
All right, well, thank you guys, and best of luck as you wrap up, and stay tuned for more interviews from myself over here at the Comics Multiverse and Comic Watch.
We'll be watching the Comic Watch.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Later.